Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm very pleased to rise today and share this time with the honourable member from Calgary Nose Hill. Mr. Speaker, the details of the pan-Canadian strategy to meet the international commitments in the Paris Accord will include some form of carbon tax or cap-and-trade system. After the Paris Agreement was adopted in December of last year, all we have heard from this Liberal government is carbon tax. In fact, they have met with our provincial and territorial leaders to sell them on this carbon tax. Not all the provinces brought into this, and Mr. Speaker, they should not. This government is moving too quickly, and in doing so is not putting together a great deal for all Canadians. Pricing carbon emissions through a carbon tax, hopefully to encourage companies and households to adapt green practices, is simply a tax grab. Carbon tax puts a monetary price on the real costs imposed on our economy, communities, and planet. Shifting to energy-efficient products will put a demand on industry to develop better technologies. Where are we now, and where does this government think industry is going? I'll speak on this a little later, Mr. Speaker. The cap-and-trade system puts a firm limit or cap on the overall levels of carbon pollution from industry in reducing to set pollution targets. There are followers for both systems and arguments from both sides if a setup works and can work in unison. Personally, I'm not in favour of another tax with longer-term effects. I believe Canadians want action now and want to participate in helping reduce gas emissions. From companies to homeowners, you only have to look and you will find some reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Mr. Speaker, in my riding of Yellowhead, you can see results. People are reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and they don't have to be taxed to do it. They do it because it's good for the environment. This Liberal government should look and listen to what our industry and individuals are doing and get involved. Not by taxing them, Mr. Speaker, but by investing with Canada's industry and the people to develop technologies that do reduce our greenhouse gases. And industries are presently doing this at the present time. Some examples, Mr. Speaker, can be found in my Yellowhead riding. Our federal government must work with its provincial counterparts to develop new building codes to enable developers and home builders to design and build energy-efficient homes and buildings. Financial incentive programs should be in place to assist in using solar and thermal power so that energy needs are reduced. Government-sponsored resources about the best building practice should be at the top of the list. Together with industry sector, Canada will be a leader. We should not be giving money to other countries to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. We should be developing our science and technology to be the most efficient users of energy and in reducing greenhouse gas emissions. By sharing our science and technology with other countries, we not only become greener, we grow our economy. I recently built a home and a large workshop on my acreage in Edson, Alberta. Mr. Speaker, I use the best practices out there to make my home efficient. My house is 3,200 square feet, and my workshop is 2,400 square feet. My apartment here in Ottawa is 4 years old and is 800 square feet. I spend more money on power for my apartment than I do for my property in Alberta. Why? Efficiency. People across this great country of ours are doing the right thing in making us greener. Government incentives will encourage more to do so. The more involved we are, the greener we become, resulting in less energy needed. Very simple. Mr. Speaker, in my riding, we have a new college at the town of Drayton Valley. I'm very proud of it. It's called the BioMile and Clean Energy Technology Centre. The centre trains young people who are going into the energy work field the opportunity to learn the latest scientific and technical ways to reduce industry greenhouse gas emissions. This, Mr. Speaker, is where this federal government and provincial government should be investing. We can reduce emissions. Industry is already a player. Our students want to learn how to be the best in clean fuel technology, in clean building technology, and more efficient vehicle technology. This government should and must fund greener science and technology. Mr. Speaker, one of the big industry sponsors of the BioMile and Clean Energy Technology Centre is WestJet. This Alberta-based airline understands that we need to address greenhouse gas emissions as it pertains to the airline industry as a whole. I feel that confident that Air Canada and others do as well. 2% of Canada's greenhouse gas emissions come from transportation directly related to air travel. Canada produces, as we all know, less than 2% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions. I believe it's about 1.6. WestJet and others are working at reducing fuel consumption by 1.5% a year and reducing emissions by 50% from 2005 levels by 2020. They are reducing greenhouse gas emissions and fuel consumption by investing in technology innovation, infrastructure efficiency, operational improvements, and smart economic measures. They are investing billions of dollars on new, modern, efficient aircraft. They are, Mr. Speaker, already part of the solution. Why are we now going to hit them again with a carbon tax over and above some provincial carbon tax and some cap-and-trade programs? Mr. Speaker, my riding is known as coal country. We're proud of the industry. With several coal-fired electrical generating stations, our riding will see a lot more unemployment in people as the plants voluntarily close down due to the government regulations. The Genesee Hydro facility is one of the latest and is the state-of-the-art, and its greenhouse gas emissions are the lowest in North America, and in fact, in the world. This was done through science and technology, and I believe that these facilities can be made to emit 0% emissions. This is where government and industry should be working together, and in doing so, help the world to be more efficient at reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Besides thermal coal, Yellowhead is blessed with an abundance of metallurgical coal used in steelmaking. Some argue the best coal in the world. Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, this is probably correct as it comes out of the Yellowhead. Tech industries are a major player in the Yellowhead. They have been active in reducing greenhouse gas emissions by initiating corporate policies such as anti-idling policy on equipment, converting diesel-powered trucks to LNG, alternate energy generators, wind turbines. Their goal is to avoid 450,000 tons of CO2 emissions annually by 2030. Again, industry is doing their part in reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Adding a carbon tax, is this really the right thing to do? Or should the government be partners in new science and innovation in the mining sector? Mr. Speaker, agriculture is a big part of my riding. We have grain farms and cattle ranches. If you want to see a group of Canadians that want to protect the environment and work the land, these are our unsung heroes. Ranchers are strong conservationists. They work every day to keep the land healthy, all the while lowering greenhouse gas emissions. It's the same with our farmers. Canada's Farm Credit Canada has contributed $8.1 million in energy loans to make farmers more efficient and sustainable in their operations. They, in fact, have even in-house reduced their air travel by 13.5%, their overall travel by 6.7%, and the paper use by 9.4%. Again, Canadians working together to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Farms, by planning minimum tillage practices, save over 170 million tons of fuel annually. Animal welfare and caring for the environment are important to people in agriculture. Their livelihood depends on it now and for future generations. Should our government hit them with a carbon tax or work with them to help reduce our emissions by investing in science and technology? Mr. Speaker, I would be remiss if I did not speak about our forest industry. Our forest plays an important role in the carbon cycle They can be carbon sinks or carbon sources. How we manage our forces is extremely critical. Again, government and industry must and needs to work together using science and technology in harvesting, replanting, and protecting our forests. Thank you, Madam Speaker, for a little bit of extra time.
Questions and comments, questions et commentaires. The honourable member for London West. Oh, sorry, is that not, is it Burnaby North? Seymour? Sorry, I'm sorry, I can't see that there's one seat over there.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I've heard repeatedly that this proposal discussed earlier today is talked as a revenue grab, but I come from British Columbia, where the first carbon pricing was instituted, and it was revenue neutral, much like the proposal that was put out today. In fact, there was an article in The Economist in July 2014 that detailed the plan when the first $10 a ton amount was put into place in 2008, and that rose by $5 a ton until for the first 6 years. In those first 6 years, per person consumption of fuels dropped by 16% in British Columbia, while the rest of Canada per person consumption raised by 3%. It's also interesting to note that the province, with a revenue-neutral carbon pricing already in place, is one of the fastest-growing economies in the country, Madam Speaker. Is this not a demonstration that carbon pricing works?
Go ahead.
I'd like to thank the member for that question. It is an indicator, but you have to take a lot of other factors. I believe in the early stages, British Columbia was going through an economy slump. And part of the reason the transportation and stuff went down because there wasn't as much movement in the province of British Columbia, as I was a resident there for 40-some years. Thank you.
Questions and comments, questions et commentaires. The honourable member for Foothills.
We've heard from our colleagues across the floor, and I heard it during my colleagues from Calgary Nose Hill's presentation as well, that simply drive an electric car. We've heard that in Alberta. Certainly the response from the Alberta provincial government when it came to imposing their carbon tax was, well, you can just start using public transit, or you can start using an electric car, just trade in your car. Well, I live in rural Alberta. My riding takes me more than 5 hours to drive from one end to the other. In the middle of the winter, it can be a challenge for certain, but the vast majority of my constituents are ranchers. They will not be using a Toyota Prius to haul their cattle liner down the highway. They won't be using an electric car to haul their bales from one field to the next. And I would just like to ask my colleague, what does he feel the impact of a carbon tax will have on the agricultural sector? This isn't that simple of just simply changing your lifestyle. We have a lifestyle that has ensured that we're successful. What would a carbon tax and the implications of that have on the agriculture sector?
The honourable member for Yellowhead.
I'd like to thank the honourable member for that question. It's going to have a great impact. We've heard today, I believe it's 11 cents, 11 point some cents for gasoline, and it's around 14 cents for diesel. A farmer that is farming 10,000 acres is really going to feel the impact, adding 14 cents a litre to the amount of fuel that he uses as equipment. It's going to be a large impact. It's going to hurt industry. I know, like in the airline industry, as a former commercial pilot, in my past, that an outfit like WestJet is probably going to be looking at $2 million or better just in the carbon tax on fuel alone. Thank you.
Questions and comments, questions et commentaires. L'honorable député de Drummond. L'honorable député de Drummond.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Alors, bien sûr, je voudrais revenir sur le fait, souvent on parle de problèmes économiques reliés au changement climatique. On dit si on lutte contre les changements climatiques, c'est horrible, les gens vont souffrir économiquement. Mais il ne faut pas oublier non plus qu'il y a des problèmes présentement que les changements climatiques affectent l'économie de nos citoyens, nos sociétés. Qu'on parle des sécheresses par rapport à l'agriculture, qu'on parle des inondations. La ville de Drummondville a subi une énorme inondation encore cette année et il y a plusieurs citoyens qui ont été inondés. Les compagnies d'assurance ont été débordées et la ville, bien sûr, a une pression supplémentaire pour répondre à tous ces besoins-là. Donc, ça a des conséquences aussi de ne pas lutter contre les changements climatiques. En fait, la table ronde nationale sur l'environnement et l'économie a mentionné que si on n'agissait pas sur la lutte contre les changements climatiques, ça peut coûter des milliards de dollars, ce qui va être plus coûteux que si on agit tout de suite, prévenir plutôt que guérir, comme dit le dicton.
The honourable member for Yellowhead, a very brief answer, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not exactly sure what he was asking, but I think if you look overall Canadians, and I don't care what province it is, most Canadians believe in reducing greenhouse gases. And yes, we should act now, but we should not act without consulting with our provinces, our municipalities, our industries, and people, because they have been doing exactly what we're talking about for a number of years. Lots of companies, lots of municipalities, lots of individuals have been very innovative in greenhouse gas savings. And I think that we have to all work together. Thank you.